The seventh day of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs had already descended into disarray when the courtroom was thrown into further shock. Without prior announcement or legal representation, Joe Rogan, comedian, UFC commentator, and host of the world's most downloaded podcast, walked through the doors. Dressed in a dark gray blazer and jeans, he carried nothing but a black notebook and a head full of disturbing knowledge. What had once been speculative discussion on his show had now led him directly into the heart of a legal storm. He was there to testify under oath. What Rogan delivered wasn't tabloid fodder. It was a serious, first-hand intervention. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The press gallery, already overflowing with reporters and curious onlookers, buzzed with anticipation. But the moment Rogan took the stand, the room fell silent. No cameras were allowed, but court sketch artists scrambled to capture every angle. Diddy's legal team looked bewildered. "State your name and profession," the judge instructed. "Joseph James Rogan. I'm the host of the Joe Rogan Experience." Rogan didn't mince words. "I'm not here to spread rumors," he began. "I've interviewed people with first-hand accounts related to this case. People too scared to talk anywhere else. I also have recordings. And yes, they're secure." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Rogan was no longer just a commentator. In this moment, he was being treated like a whistleblower. He described interviews with former bodyguards, ex-label executives, and industry insiders who came to him seeking an outlet that wouldn't silence their stories. "They didn't trust the system," Rogan said, "but they trusted me not to edit out the hard parts." Then came the bombshell. "In 2023, I had a guest on," Rogan said. "A former security detail for a major artist. Off-air, he told me about a private server, kept in a bunker-like room at Diddy's Miami compound. It held files, videos, recordings, documents, and he claimed that Jay-Z, LeBron James, and other public figures knew about what happened at Diddy's so-called freak-offs." Gasps filled the courtroom once again. Diddy looked shaken. His lawyers immediately objected, but the judge overruled them. Rogan pressed on, revealing that the same guest had witnessed these events firsthand. "He didn't call them parties," Rogan emphasized. "He called them rituals. Phones were confiscated. Guests were blindfolded. It was all routine, as if it were normal in the industry." He explained that freak-off was code, used casually by insiders. It wasn't just indulgence, it was performance, secrecy, and power on display. Everyone acted like this was just part of the deal. By the end of his testimony, it was clear. This wasn't just a trial about Diddy anymore. It was the peeling back of an industry's darkest curtain. And Joe Rogan had helped pull the first thread. When asked if he had brought any recordings, Rogan nodded. "I submitted excerpts to the DA's office before coming here," he said. "They contain audio of unnamed insiders discussing these events." He explained that some of the voices had been verified by forensic audio experts, per the judge's order, to have the recordings officially logged. Then Rogan said something that made every juror sit forward. "I've had Navy SEALs on my show, conspiracy theorists, professors, even CIA whistleblowers, and I've never heard anything this disturbing come from people so high up in entertainment." He glanced toward Diddy before finishing his thought with quiet intensity. "This isn't celebrity gossip. This is systemic abuse hiding behind platinum records and red carpet smiles." As he settled further into his testimony, the court permitted Rogan to recount specific stories shared on his podcast over the years. He said he'd begun noticing a troubling pattern as early as 2018. "One of my early guests was a tour manager for a major R&B act. He came on to talk about the dark side of the music business, drug culture, pay-for-play, NDAs. But during a break, he told me something else. He said Diddy's parties weren't just indulgent, they were dangerous. Rogan emphasized that many of the most disturbing revelations never aired. People were scared. One guest asked me to blur his voice, distort his name, and record the segment in a remote cabin. He described a producer who had attended a Diddy-hosted party in 2015. He told me what he saw left him shaking. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors. People slipping things into drinks. A-list celebrities pretending not to notice. Reading from notes taken during that off-air interview, Rogan quoted the producer. "I saw people being filmed against their will, and Diddy called it leverage." The judge asked whether these claims had been verified. Rogan responded, "Many were anecdotal, but too many lined up to ignore. These weren't hallway whispers. They were detailed accounts, timelines, locations, and multiple people describing the same behaviors." He revealed that he had archived these unaired stories privately, protected by NDAs he drafted with legal help. "I didn't want to be sued into oblivion," he said, "but I also didn't want this stuff buried." Rogan then referenced the Jane Doe lawsuits. "I started connecting dots when the names and behaviors in those lawsuits matched what my guests had been whispering for years." He shared one particularly haunting moment. In 2022, a well-known music video director came to him in tears. He told me he had unreleased footage, raw, uncut, from one of Diddy's parties. He said he'd been blackmailed into filming these events for over a decade and was terrified to go public. Rogan concluded, "This isn't a court of opinion anymore. It's a reckoning. And I'm here because people who trusted me with the truth deserve to be heard, even if they're too afraid to show their faces." He took a deep breath before preparing to recount the moment that made headlines around the world. Elon Musk's unexpected comments on his podcast involving Jennifer Lopez and Diddy. It started off casual. Joe Rogan said, "We were talking about Hollywood hypocrisy, how some celebrities speak out about politics but go silent when it's someone they actually know." That's when Elon Musk brought up Jennifer Lopez. The courtroom leaned in. "She dated Diddy, went to his parties, knew what he was like," Elon said. "So why hasn't she ever warned anyone?" Rogan paused. That clip went viral, racking up millions of views. But what stuck with Joe wasn't the backlash. It was how fast people jumped to defend J-Lo instead of asking what she might be hiding. He reminded the court about the 1999 nightclub shooting that sent rapper Shine to prison. Jennifer Lopez was in the car when the gun was allegedly thrown out the window. She claimed Diddy didn't do it. He walked free. Shine went to prison. And Jennifer? She kept dating Diddy for 2 more years. Joe let that linger. "What does it say?" he asked. "When someone walks away from a shooting, protects the man arrested, and stays with him while someone else takes the fall." Then he dropped a chilling line. "What if you're only perfect for the devil?" Rogan pointed out how many celebrities praised Diddy's philanthropy over the years, but vanished when lawsuits started piling up. "Where was J-Lo?" he asked, when the freak-off tapes were mentioned. Where was she when Shine finally told the truth about 1999? He closed with a pointed remark. "I'm not saying she did anything criminal. I'm saying silence in the face of abuse is complicity. And too many people in Diddy's orbit have mastered the art of disappearing when the cameras turn off." Then Rogan leaned in, returning to a story that had haunted him for months. A tale involving what one of his off-the-record guests called the bunker. In 2022, a former bodyguard who worked at Diddy's Miami compound came on my show, Rogan said. "We didn't air that segment. He got cold feet. But what he told me off mic stuck." The man described a reinforced vault buried beneath the estate, accessible only via biometric scan. Inside were dozens of encrypted hard drives. He called it the black box. Diddy's insurance policy. Footage of freak-off parties, blackmail, hidden camera videos. Not just of randoms, of celebrities, executives, politicians, Rogan said. The courtroom gasped. Diddy's defense team squirmed. One juror reached for their water glass with trembling hands. The guard once walked in during a backup session. Racks of air-gapped servers lined the room. He didn't get far. A man with a gun told him to leave. "That's Diddy's church," the guard said. Joe paused. That phrase stuck with me. He whispered, "Diddy's church." Whatever was in that room, it was sacred to someone, sacred because it held leverage. The judge allowed the prosecution to admit Joe Rogan's affidavit into evidence, clarifying that although the physical existence of the so-called vault hadn't been independently verified, multiple podcast guests had corroborated its existence. That made it relevant for establishing a behavioral pattern. Rogan explained that two former guests, both stylists who had worked with bad boy artists, described a downstairs room with security cameras pointed inward. One said she was asked to sign an NDA in that very room after noticing what appeared to be a disguised peephole embedded in the mirror. "That's what's chilling," Rogan told the court. People describe these spaces, these rituals, in the exact same way, years apart from totally different walks of life. Then Rogan dropped something the courtroom hadn't heard before. 3 months ago, a whistleblower reached out to my team. Anonymously, claimed they worked for a third-party data recovery company in Miami. Said they were hired to extract encrypted video from a corrupted server. Claimed some of it showed guests at Diddy's events in compromising situations. He said he never aired it, but he archived it. Because if this trial reaches federal seizure level, the government might already have that drive. He ended the segment by turning to face Diddy, directly. "If you're innocent, let them search the basement. Open the vault. Release what's in the black box." By then, the courtroom had shifted. Rogan wasn't just a celebrity witness. He was becoming an informant speaking to a pattern of manipulation, fear, and silence. "I want to talk about patterns," he said, flipping through thick, handwritten notes. "Because this isn't just about parties. It's about control, fear, image, and silence." Rogan listed former podcast guests who had hinted at buried secrets but never followed through. One was a hairstylist who'd worked with A-list talent. "She came on to talk fashion," he said, "but off-air she told me she left the industry because of what Diddy made her witness. One night at a Hamptons house party, she said she saw someone being filmed through a two-way mirror in a private room. I asked her who else was there," Rogan continued. She hesitated. Then she said a name, Jay-Z. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Rogan clarified, "She didn't say Jay-Z participated in anything, just that he was present, multiple times. She described him walking through those parties like a ghost, seen but not seen, never spoke, never lingered, but he was there." The implication wasn't criminal participation, it was complicity, silence. "I've had ex-security, dancers, personal assistants, producers. Many mentioned the same thing. Jay-Z and Diddy were like two sides of the same coin. One loud, chaotic, the other quiet, calculated. But the scenes? Always the same." Rogan said he once confronted a well-placed industry insider about why no one called out the behavior. The man just laughed. He told me, "You don't take down Puff without pulling Hav down, too." The prosecution seized on that line. It supported their central theory: institutional protection, reputations guarded by silence, and power preserved through fear. Joe Rogan leaned forward, his voice steady but intense. "If Diddy was the fire," he said, "Jay-Z was the smoke detector that never went off." He paused, then revealed how his team had received anonymous warnings to drop their investigation into Diddy. One email had been particularly chilling. "Don't dig too deep, Joe. You'll end up like the ones who did." Rogan's team traced the IP address to a firm linked to Roc Nation's PR division. The judge allowed the statement with a cautionary note. Turning to the jury, Rogan declared, Silence is a weapon, and this entire machine, it's built on people keeping their mouths shut. But I'm not built that way. Then, Rogan introduced a series of names he said were in the wrong room at the wrong time. He referenced the Manzaro lawsuit, a civil case in which a man claimed he was paraded around a Diddy party wearing a mask made of human anatomy. That's not a rumor, Rogan said. I spoke with someone who was on that yacht. The witness, a young videographer in his early 20s, had been hired to film an event in January 2023. According to Rogan, the videographer was instructed to only document the happy stuff. But what he saw left him traumatized. Rogan read from an anonymized transcript of their conversation. There were celebrities everywhere: LeBron James, Gloria Estefan, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, people smiling. But the further back you went, the darker it got. There were red-lit rooms, people restrained, a man in a mask being led around like a pet. The courtroom fell silent. The videographer allegedly handed over his memory cards at the end of the night. Diddy's team paid him $5,000 and promised he'd receive a final cut of the footage. He never heard from them again. What made this testimony especially potent was its connection to an actual civil complaint, lending weight to Rogan's claims. You think this is chaos? Rogan asked the jury. It's not. It's a system. And the scariest part? The people we idolize. They're in the rooms where it happens. He looked up, eyes sharp. If even one of those tapes gets played in court, half this industry is finished. He closed his notebook. I'm not afraid of getting sued. I'm afraid of what happens if we keep pretending this doesn't exist. Then, Rogan turned to the 2023 yacht party, an event previously whispered about in legal documents but never fully revealed. People think it's a myth, he said, but it's real. And I've got testimony from 2 people who were on that boat. 1 crew member, 1 guest. As Rogan unfolded a letter from a former yacht staffer, heavily redacted to protect their identity, Diddy's legal team began whispering furiously. The courtroom was frozen. They believed they were attending a private music video shoot. The passengers were told they were VIPs, and under no circumstances were they allowed to use their phones. Before boarding, security conducted thorough pat-downs. Joe Rogan paused as he recounted what happened next. Once the boat sailed into international waters, everything changed. The mood shifted. Curtains were drawn, a private room was locked, and then came what the crew referred to as the rotation. New guests were brought in every hour, each escorted by security. Joe's voice grew colder as he continued. A witness revealed there were hidden cameras embedded inside mirror frames throughout the yacht. Some staff members were instructed to spike drinks, a request some refused, but others complied. A hush fell over the courtroom when the witness began his account. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was a last-minute addition, a favor within the industry. He thought he was there for networking, but soon realized it was something far more sinister. According to Joe, quoting the guest, there was a man wearing a mask. People were laughing at him. It resembled performance art, but it wasn't. Several people had their phones out, recording. Among those watching were some very famous individuals. Joe Rogan mentioned that one name appeared repeatedly in multiple testimonies: Gloria Estefan. He clarified that no one was claiming she participated in any wrongdoing, but her name came up, just like LeBron James's, Beyoncé's, and Jay-Z's. This pattern painted a disturbing and complex picture. Then Joe revealed the most shocking detail. After the yacht docked, the masked man was offered money to forget what he saw. He refused. 2 weeks later, his apartment was broken into. The only items taken were his external hard drives. The court ordered this statement to be entered into evidence. Joe looked at the jury and emphasized the stakes. People risked their lives to speak the truth, while others were paid to forget it. By now, Joe Rogan's testimony had shifted the trial's mood entirely. "This isn't just about celebrity antics," he said. "It's about systemic intimidation, power, and blackmail. Let me talk about leverage." He explained that what Diddy created wasn't merely a party scene. It was an ecosystem of silence. Multiple podcast guests had confided in him off-air, in whispers and sometimes tears, describing the same experience. Invited to a party, told to sign a non-disclosure agreement, filmed without their knowledge, then a month later, receiving a text. It wasn't a threat, just a quiet reminder. "Had fun last month? Let's keep that between us." Joe called it a web of invisible handcuffs. He shared how a Grammy-winning producer told him he'd been offered a massive career boost in exchange for deleting a video filmed at a Diddy party. The producer refused, and a week later, 3 venues canceled his tour. Joe also revealed he had received legal letters from public relations firms warning him to stop discussing certain individuals. He didn't name names, but the jury didn't need a roadmap. Then came the chilling part. A guest who once worked for a celebrity security agency confided to Joe Rogan about a master folder. A real one. Diddy called it the rainy day file. Joe explained that this folder contained backup footage, stored off-site and encrypted. It was insurance. The theory was clear. If anyone tried to take Diddy down, he would leak what he had on them. Joe took a deep breath before sharing the most unsettling detail. One of those files, the source said, featured a very powerful politician. The name wasn't his to say, but if the feds have those tapes, this trial was just the beginning. The judge immediately ordered that line stricken from the record, but the damage was already done. Closing the segment, Joe stated plainly, "This wasn't fame. This was fear." He added, "He didn't just throw parties. He built a vault of silence. And if one key turns, it all comes flooding out." As his testimony neared its end, Joe Rogan stood from the witness chair. He hadn't been asked to stand, but he needed to finish standing. "This isn't about canceling Diddy," he said firmly. "It's about finally holding someone accountable who built an empire on fear." The judge allowed him to deliver a closing statement. The courtroom fell deathly silent. Even the sketch artist stopped drawing. Joe continued, "Over the years, I've interviewed astronauts, scientists, philosophers, comedians, and ex-spies. You learn to detect when someone's lying. You also learn when someone's holding back because they're scared. I'm telling you, what I've heard about Diddy, it didn't come from trolls. It came from people who shook while speaking, who looked over their shoulders every 10 seconds. He paused, then added, "If the feds don't find the footage, the public will. Someone, somewhere, has it. And when it comes out, this courtroom will look like a warm-up act." Joe glanced at Diddy. "I don't know if you started this. I don't know if you inherited it. But I know you kept it going. And now you're watching it crumble from the inside out." The judge asked if Rogan had anything more to add. He nodded slowly. "I've said a lot on the mic. Some of it dumb, some of it funny. But this is the one time I needed every word to count. Because if even one kid out there is saved from stepping into that kind of nightmare, then all of this, every threat, every NDA, every silent producer was worth breaking." He stepped down. The jury watched in silence as Rogan walked past the defendant's table. For the first time in days, Diddy didn't look up.